The plane is really only built for like 200 excess pounds,
Yeah.
but he gets 300 in, and then they're like, we're gonna send this guy, we're gonna send this guy with you, and
like,
it's
I'm
the
only
300-pound overweight guy.
It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
That's gonna be good. That's gonna be good. Moving on, though, talking American Made. All right, I'm very excited to talk about this movie now. And now, Joe, I got a question for you. Okay, my good friend, have you seen War Dogs? With Jonah Hill Miles? How cool, because we can talk about that. I wanted to get into that a lot. I didn't want to be talking to myself. Have you seen Wolf of Wall Street?
Yes, I did.
And have you seen? I think you have. Have you seen Pain and Gain?
Yes.
Oh man, we got a trifecta right here, because these are the movies that I really base American Made off of. Why don't you go ahead and give a plot summary of American Made for the audience?
So American Made is about an American pilot named Bobby Seale who becomes a drug runner for the cartel and does reconnaissance for the CIA. During this time, he starts off working for the CIA, and then the drug cartel brings him in, and the CIA brings him back in, and the drug cartel brings him back in, and then the CIA brings him back in, so on and so forth, to where he's just in a mess of like cash everywhere from all these jobs, and then of course a lot of trouble from other agencies in America and the cartel itself.
Right. And this is indeed a true story. Stars Tom Cruise, who, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not a Tom Cruise fan. I can count the performances I really liked by Tom Cruise largely on one hand. Excuse me. I'm not gonna be that. I'm not gonna be that unkind. Okay, but I'm just gonna say, like, I'm not a Tom Cruise fan. I think Tom Cruise is like a pretty boy actor. I think he's an actor that, like, we like his looks. We see him in a lot. He's almost the pinnacle of a movie star, and it has nothing to do with his politics. Has nothing to do with his religious stance with Scientology. I don't care about that. I really don't. He's a very successful actor, and I think we confuse like the fact that he's been in a lot of successful movies with him being a really good actor. And
no, he's very good at acting.
I mean, I think I'm not going to disagree with that, but I don't find him, even in some of his best movies, I don't even find him to be like arguably like, oh my god, I gotta watch it. Not even Oscar worthy, but like, I gotta watch him actor. Okay, he's good in Jerry Maguire. He's good in. I'd like to go back and rewatch it because I don't remember a lot of it, but I know he was good in Vanilla Sky. The best performance I think he's ever done was Eyes Wide Shut. Okay. That's the one I think he did, because he was challenged in that. A lot of his movies, I think, especially like when you get into Mission Impossible and stuff like that, War of the Worlds, he kind of guides on like this sort of like charm that he has, you know what I mean, and stuff running. Like that. Yes, and running. That's exactly, and his great athleticism. Okay, I'm not a Tom Cruise hater. I just don't love him. I think he's one of the most overrated actors working today, honestly.
To jump on that, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I'm not the biggest Tom Cruise fan, but the thing is, like, I don't care for him too much, but he's in a lot of movies I do like yes. Edge of Tomorrow, Minority Report, Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol. That's the one I like the most out of all of them. So he's in a lot of movies like that I really enjoy. It's just I'm not the biggest fan of him.
Indeed. Now, American Made, I will give it to him. He really does a good job.
Oh yeah.
Here. He's very zealous in this movie, and like you can tell by the details, by like the sweat on his brow, and by like the physicality of his performance too, because it is an immensely very physical performance. Oh, yeah. I think a lot of people shortchange that in the reviews, at least that I read. This is a very physical performance. Okay, and this is very much, it really feels like a star vehicle for him. Like, this is something that you could have seen maybe come out 10, 15 years ago to like launch Tom Cruise's career. It's funny that it's coming out now, you know what I mean? Because it really rides on the charisma and the kind of performance of Tom Cruise, because there's not a lot of big actors in this movie. You got Sarah Wright, who plays his character, Barry Seal, who plays Barry Seal's wife, Lucy. You have Domhnall Gleeson, who plays Schaefer, who's one of the CIA agents, indeed. And then you have like little here and there performances by the likes of like Jesse Plemons and Jed Reeves. You know what I mean? Very, very really the term, very no-name actors in this movie. Tom Cruise is really the pinnacle of this movie and the central sort of role here. You know what I mean? That's definitely what he is.
Yeah.
And the film was also directed by Doug Liman. Now, Liman has done a lot of movies. Did you see his earlier movie this year, The Wall, with John Cena? Did you see that?
No, I do know what you're talking about, though.
That was the one with John Cena and Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yeah.
I think we briefly, Dom and I addressed it briefly on Sleepless a few months ago when it came out back in May. Good movie, played way different beats than this one. It was very small budget, very good though. I did like it a lot. Liman's also the director of The Bourne, and he was also The Bourne Supremacy, Bourne Ultimatum, Jumper, and he was also the director. I just found this out a minute ago. He was also the director of Edge of Tomorrow.
Yep.
So yes, okay, you knew that.
Yeah.
So he's been around the block directing quite a bit of stuff. Overall, though, I like American Made. I think there's a lot of good in this movie. But I'm kind of surprised, and agree or disagree with me here. This movie is one of the highest rated mainstream releases this year. It's got high 80s on Rotten Tomatoes, very positive reviews, everything in between. But the thing that I don't understand is that it doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you think differently. It's not totally dissimilar to War Dogs.
No.
It's not that dissimilar to War Dogs, directed by Todd Phillips, the same guy who directed The Hangover. It's not very different. Now, the thing that I don't understand is how come American Made gets so praised and War Dogs got really, really kind of blasted in a
Shafted.
way. It really did. It really did. It didn't make a lot of money. Critics ignored it. Critics didn't like it. Audiences ignored it. What's your take on that? Why do you think this got higher praise than War Dogs?
I also agree with you. It doesn't really do anything new with this kind of story, like this whole like getting in trouble with the government and trying to like outrun them, outplay them, and whatnot. I think it just got away with it. One, because it's Tom Cruise, as we said, really gave a good performance, and the supporting cast too, I would say, gave a really good. Even though they're a bunch of no names, they were really good in this film. I would say. Another thing too is I think War Dogs. I think it's an alright film, but like I think the one thing they messed up on was when it came to like explaining how like the gun trading works in that film. They did a very poor job at that, I think. While like with this film, it's kind of just like, hey, it's drugs. You know what that is. This is how it works. And like they kind of like gloss over it very quickly, but it's done it's explained very easily, basically, in the film.
Yeah, I can agree on that. I liked War Dogs a lot because War Dogs does something that American Made really doesn't. American Made focuses largely on Barry Seal. We given time. Oh, the information that Barry knows at a given time. Okay, it's not like we're cutting back to Schaefer. We are in several scenes, but we're not cutting back to Schaefer and like doing behind the scenes deals that like Barry doesn't know about.
That was actually another thing I didn't like about the movie was I felt like you could have got more of the CIA like plot line in this by using Schaefer as like a person to see like his eyes through like everything that's happening.
We know what Barry knows at this given time. You know what I mean? Because he's also recounting it too. That's the frame story behind this, is that he's recounting it and recording it on VHS tapes. That's sort of the backlog. With War Dogs, I like the exterior stuff in War Dogs. I like the plot about the repackaged ammo. I love that. I thought that was brilliantly showed. I like the fact that it went into kind of and it's summed up really great in that film with a line by Jonah Hill with Dick Cheney's America. I love that. And I mean, there's some really good like dialogue too that works really well in that movie. I thought War Dogs dialogue too that works really well in that movie. I thought War Dogs pulsated with energy, which I loved a lot. And the dynamic that Miles Teller and Jonah Hill had, I thought was wonderful. I like that movie a lot. I think it's criminally underrated. But American Made belongs to the same genre as War Dogs, as Wolf of Wall Street. These are like contemporary movies set during turbulent times in American politics. They celebrate excess. They all use really rampant political corruption, and they detail it all using cynical humor.
Yeah.
And I love that. And one thing that I will mention, and then I promise I will let you get a word in edgewise.
No, it's fine.
Is that one of my favorite film critics that I've been reading a lot, Marianne Johansson, she said that she liked the movie, but she said she opined that like maybe the political corruption and government involved drug smuggling shouldn't be as fun nor as funny as the screenwriter of the film, Gary Spinelli, makes it out to be. This watching political corruption unfold like this, laughing at it, kind of celebrating it in a way, shouldn't be as fun as it is. What's your take on that?
That was the one thing I liked about the movie was its tone. I had a great time laughing at like something as cynical as drug trading or the CIA dragging this man into basically a situation where it's either, hey, you either get into this situation and help us, or we'll send you to jail. Like, it was just funny to watch that situation play out, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the other thing is, too, is I think that, not to go, like, against the political, or not to go, against the real political backdrop of the whole thing, but I do think, too, that there's an element like desensitization that a lot of many Americans face, a lot of disillusionment as well in terms of politics and how politics has let a lot of people down. So I think that by profiling it in movies like Wolf of Wall Street, which is probably the least political of the three American-made Wolf of Wall Street war dogs. Wolf of Wall Street deals with like the outskirts of Wall Street. It doesn't really talks a little bit about the government at the time, but it doesn't get a whole lot into it. It's more about the stock market and stock trades and stuff like that. But I think watching this kind of thing unfold in these movies, again, American-made, Wolf of Wall Street, War Dogs, I think watching this thing unfold, you kind of get the perspective of how this was going on. We just didn't know. Yeah. Now we do. You know, and that's the difference maker, I think, here.
Like, there's even another scene, too, where, like, I mean, somebody dies in this movie, and it's not even, like, that dark of a moment. The film just keeps going. Like, it just is like, oh, that person died. I was like, oh, okay, oh, well.
And that's why this is the contemporary crime drama, and I'll talk more about this, too, after the break. The contemporary crime drama right now is so good. Okay. It's really quickly becoming one of my favorite genres in American film.
Okay.
Is like, again, American-made Wolf of Wall Street, War Dogs, Pain and Gain. Really excessive movies that like follow an anti-hero, somebody that we really shouldn't like is doing very bad things. Maybe we like them for some things, but we don't like them all the time. And there's a lot of embedded in these stories. There's a lot of like observations about the depraved and unethical political landscape, a lot of very cynical, corruption-driven humor and ugliness and sweatiness and seaminess. I love it, and I think it's really an awesome genre. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, this is, like you said, it's becoming one of my favorite genres as well. Mainly because I really like Pain and Gain for a Michael Bay film. I actually thought that was really well done, and I wish he would do more films like that.
We talked about that off air. I said that's probably my favorite Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, you know what? Probably same here,
That's
honestly.
probably my favorite Michael Bay movie. I think that he did a great job.
Even War Dogs. I know I said it's all right, but I still was entertained watching it. I still had a great time watching it. And then Wolf of Wall Street, out of all of them, I would probably say that's the top, because I like the way Scorsese did that film. It is 3 hours long, but I still think it was like one hell of a ride to watch.
These are fun certificates.
Yeah.
Indeed. I get the sense that we both did enjoy this movie, American Made.
Definitely.
I get the sense that we really did enjoy it. I think there's a lot of good here. Talk about some stuff, Joe. Talk about some stuff that you really liked in this movie, be it Tom Cruise, be it the cinematography. What'd you dig in this movie?
Okay, one thing was the editing and pacing in this movie. This movie flies by very quickly, and the one thing I really liked about it is when he's like showing like the map of like where he's planning to like deliver everything, they have like little cool like fun graphic animations of stuff happening to keep you like engaged doing like these narrations. Also, another thing I liked about this movie is it doesn't shove 70s and 80s references in your face during this time period.
Yes.
There was no like horror, like Friday the 13th movie post in the background. Star Wars isn't on like some like theater in the background.
Yes.
I love when films do that. It's like, I get it. I can get like little like doses here and there. I don't need it shoved in my face constantly.
I wholeheartedly agree. And you know how this movie communicated setting and communicated era was by the cinematography.
Yep.
Cesar Chalon, I hope I'm saying this name right. Cesar Chalon. He's a Uruguayan filmmaker and film director, cinematographer. A couple of his filmography includes his big one, which I have not seen. I've seen clips. I've studied clips. It's kind of like Blade Runner. Never saw it in its entirety. That's going to change today. I'm actually watching Blade Runner today. Ooh, but nice. Cesar Chalon did the cinematography for City of God, which is one of the most acclaimed movies. Was one of the most acclaimed movies of the last decade. Came out in 2002. He did the film Blindness, which was actually his last movie that he did cinematography for. That was about 9 years ago. So he came back to do this. This movie has an intensely high fidelity VHS quality to it.
Yeah, it does.
And I almost thought, and I looked it up after, I can't find any sources, and I don't think this is true. I thought this movie was shot on film, but it wasn't. It was, as far as I could tell, shot on digital, you know, like how everything is shot nowadays. I thought it was actually shot on film to give that old retro quality. You know, it's actually a movie that was shot on film fairly recently. I can't say the same about the sequel, but I know the first one was Now You See Me. That was shot on film because they wanted to, the director of that film, name slips my mind at the moment, but the director of that film wanted to really emphasize the magic qualities of the film, and he said like the magic and the manipulation that it played on the viewer was really pertinent if we used actual film stock rather than digital. He said digital would make it look too clean. He said it would be too clean.
That's actually a really cool.
I can't. Yeah,
fact.
I can't say the same for the sequel. And I liked both movies, but I can't say the same for the sequel. But Now You See Me was shot on film. I kept thinking this was too. And I mean, even the end credits too. The end credits. I even said in my review, which you can read at stevethemovieman.proboards.com or influxmagazine.com. I had to get the plug in there. I actually said too that the end credits of this film, which are really cool, if you know what I'm talking about. They're very cool. The kind of credits you want to stay for. I said that it reminded me of something that's like this. It reminded me of something like this oddly grainy, these primary colors that you'd find opening like a trippy Adult Swim show that's on late at night when you should be asleep. Like right now. You know what I mean? Like the if you know Adult
Eric
Swim,
Andre show.
Eric Andre show. Check it out with Dr. Steve Brule, those kind of like low quality public access-esque shows.
Yeah.
Like that's what it really reminded me of.
Totally.
And there's and like you said too, the graininess and like the sort of cinematography loans to the pacing, like you were just
Didn't they do
mentioning.
that in the opening credits too, or is that what you were just referring to?
They do it in the opening and the closing. In the closing,
Okay.
though, they do like where it's like blue text that says like directed by Doug Liman against a pink backdrop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They did that really with the ending, but the opening credits too. It cuts in the middle with the old Universal logo. You know, with the old Universal logo from about the 1980s or so. So I mean, it's really cool stuff, and it's stuff that you could really tell that they took into consideration. They really wanted to make this good, and they really wanted to make it like the quality of like those Maxwell tapes that you used to buy to record stuff on VCR.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I thought that was one of the best things about it. Other things that you enjoyed about this film besides the pacing and such.
Another thing I liked is that the character Lucy, his wife,
Sarah Wright Olsen, yep.
Sarah Wright. She wasn't like the typical wife in these kind of movies where like she's like totally against Tom Cruise, and like she becomes kind of annoying. She didn't really get on my nerves in this movie. Like as what's another one? Like in War Dogs, I think it was. I think the wife character kind of got on my nerves. Or in like Breaking Bad, the TV show.
That's Miles Teller's. That's Miles Teller's wife in the film. Yes.
Yeah, like or Skylar in Breaking Bad. For those of you who've seen that series, how like she can get on like your nerves if you're watching it. This character just never really got on my nerves. Like she felt very real in that situation.
And I think not that this we could do a whole hour, God, on this topic, but like kind of going into like why we think the from like a feminist perspective of like why we think the female character in some of these movies turns out to be annoying is because I believe a lot of them are so thanklessly written. Yeah, like I watched.
They definitely are.
Like I like we'll talk. Dominic and I'll talk about this. I don't know if he's gonna bring it up, but we're talking with Battle of the Sexes. Elizabeth Shue in the film, who plays Steve Carell's wife in the movie. Such a thankless role. Nothing to that role. Nothing at all. And the thing with that, though, is like, because it's not Shue's fault. The fault is in the writing where it comes from the character, the wife character, only pops up, like in War Dogs, to say, honey, you're never home. You never do this. You never do that. You're never with me or nothing like that. But like Sarah Wright in this movie is written, I would say, pretty powerfully in a way, because she's there, she's raising kids, and you get the feeling that she's doing all this alone in the background. Yeah. You really get to feel the gravity of her presence when she's when they move. Yeah. When they move. Which I love too. I love the setting that they move to, the town of Mena in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. I love that downtown setting that gets then transformed into all the banks in order to house all of Barry's money.
That's the one thing I liked about the movie too, is like as time progresses, like the house also starts growing bigger and bigger and like gets like little add-ons to it.
The
like,
bank gets
really
a vault.
Cool.
The bank gets its own vault and everything.
He gets his own vault.
It's pretty crazy. Now to kind of shift gears and talk about Tom Cruise, I like I said before, I think he's good in the movie. I think he's very good. I think he has a commanding screen presence too. He actually, the thing is, there's actually a little bit of a unfortunate thing about this movie. I don't even think we said the word plane yet, because that's really what the core of this movie is Barry Seal is like a drug trafficker, and he's flying planes in the sky and such like that. He's flying these drugs overseas from the Medellin cartel to America and stuff like that, to Louisiana, Baton Rouge more specifically and such. Yeah. Actually, there's actually a bit of tragedy the set too. A plane crash on the set caused the death of 2 people during the filming of this movie. Oh my God. And which is really, it always sucks when that happens. Like in Scorsese's movie Silence, one of the sets collapsed and killed somebody too. Really? And on the set of Silence, look it up. On the set of the Martin Scorsese film.
The only like recent set tragedy I heard about was the new Resident Evil movie. Some guy died on one of the sets. It was like some car fell on top of him. That's the only recent one I've heard.
And Tom Cruise too. I know they had to delay the filming for the new Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah.
Because he did one of his own stunts in American Made, and he really hurt, like, I don't know if it was his vertebrae, it was his back, I know that, but he really hurt his back. And the way he landed, I don't know, I think he was supposed to land on like a part of a roof.
Yeah.
But he overshot it, I think, or they overshot it, and he really hurt his back. They had to, like I said, they had to delay the filming on the new Mission Impossible. So there's a little bit of a upsetting, depressing backstory behind the making of American Made, though. But I think mostly he gives a really good performance.
He does, definitely.
And a lot of the movie is on the weight of his shoulders, too.
Oh, yeah, no, he mean, like I said, you mentioned earlier, the supporting cast really isn't in the movie that much. So yeah, Tom Cruise is really carrying this film throughout majority of it, definitely.
And it kind of reminded me too, if you've seen the movie Blow with Johnny Depp.
I have not seen that, unfortunately.
It was kind of the same thing, where it was like you had Penelope Cruz, you had Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman, he was a side character in the film. You had Ethan Suplee. You had a lot of like side characters, and they were here and there parts. But like the real characters that you think would have a lot of weight, like Pablo Escobar in the movie, George Bush is briefly seen in the film too. Not the real George Bush, but he's played by Connor Trinier in the film. But a lot of these actors that you think might have big weights, but they're kind of just, again, pawns in like, or just background characters in the life of Barry Seal, because that's really what this movie is. It's more biographical than sort of a narrative revolving around the Medellin cartel. I think you actually get more of a story about the inner workings of cartel watching Blow. I think you get more of a story about like the way that they were handling things and the way that sort of the cartel bosses commanded things, the way Escobar's involvement was and stuff like that. The movie kind of just assumes that you know a lot of this. You either know a lot of it or you have like at least enough vague enough background knowledge off which to go.
The film just assumes that you watched Narcos on Netflix while you were at home.
Which I know you watched, because we talked briefly about that because of Pedro Pascal's in Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
Yeah.
How does this compare? Because again, I can't give any background on this. How does this compare favorably, unfavorably, not at all, somewhat to Narcos?
I mean, Narcos, like as we pointed out, it focuses mainly on the drug cartel, while this is about Barry Seal. So I would say they're kind of like neutral, because like the time they do spend with the cartel in the movie, there are like some things in Narcos that you kind of see like in this film as well. So it's just kind of in the middle, I guess I would say.
Indeed, yes. Yeah, it's in the middle, like in terms of, because this movie also too has a very, I don't want to use the word gratuitous, but I don't think I'd go as far as to say like a vulgar style. Not like vulgar in terms of being like bad language. I talk about vulgar as a stylistic. Like Michael Bay's work, I would consider vulgar.
Yeah.
Because it's very expressive. It's very excessive too. This movie too has like a style to it that's very centric to it.
Yeah.
That's got this sort of like, even like a mossy green sort of style, because a lot of it's shot in the forest and stuff like that. A lot of it's shot in like a very wilderness dense area. It's got kind of a sweat soaked vibe too. You know what I mean? This kind of like even grimy sort of setup too, as it sort of portrays Barry Seal's life and such like that. Any other big touchstones in the movie that you thought stood out greatly? Because we talked about Cesar Chalon's great cinematography. We talked about Tom Cruise's commanding performance, and we talked a little bit about Doug Liman's direction. Anything else that you think really stands out, either narratively, thematically, about American Made?
I mean, other than that, just to go back once again, the tone I thought was handled very well. I found myself just chuckling throughout most of the film. I was having a great time while watching it. Like, there's a scene where Barry Seal has to land a plane in a neighborhood. And like at first I'm thinking like, oh, this scene's gonna be like something bad's gonna happen, and no, they play it up for laughs. And actually, what happens in the scene too, like, is very funny.
It reminded me, that scene. And you haven't seen it. I know we mentioned this last week. You haven't seen it. It's the Aviator, the Martin Scorsese movie.
Yeah.
There's a scene because Leonardo DiCaprio plays Howard Hughes in that movie. There's a scene that's very similar when Howard Hughes' plane's on fire and he has to make an emergency landing, and like he's like stuck in it too. He can't like lift the thing because he can't like lift the glass because the glass is like hot too. Mm-hmm. It reminded me a lot of that scene because he has to make pretty much a crash landing. You know, any movie with like these individual pilots, you know what I mean? Like, or movies that revolve around these individual, you know, pilots and stuff like that are flying these planes and trafficking substances. There's always a plane crash scene.
Yeah, there
You know
is.
what I mean? That like shows this. And I mean, even I think one of the best scenes in this movie is the scene when he first has to take off in that disgustingly small runway in that dirt patch, and the members of the cartel are taking bets
if he's going to crash
whether or not he's gonna crash and end up like the 50-something pilots before him.
Yeah.
And like obliterate the stock and everything. Because there's a great scene too when he's like schlepping the drugs in the plane, and he's only supposed to take, like, the plane is really only built for like 200 excess pounds.
Yeah.
But he gets 300 in, and then they're like, we're gonna send this guy with you, and
like,
it's
I'm
this
already carrying,
300-pound overweight guy. Joe, go into your final thoughts on American Made, the brand new Tom Cruise crime drama. Give your final wraparound thoughts.
Okay. Well, going over the positives as we were talking about, Tom Cruise is great. The supporting cast, while they're not on screen that much, I thought they were very good. The editing and pacing of the movie is very great. And once again, something I personally love, doesn't shove the references in my face, and I like the tone in my opinion. As for the bad, as I said earlier, you could have spent more time maybe with Schaefer to see what's happening with the CIA during the film. Earlier I also said it doesn't really do anything new with this kind of story. It was a lot of fun, and it did a great job at telling the story, I thought. But overall, I really liked the movie a lot. I'm going to give it 3 stars.
That's very solid. You pretty much echoed most of my sentiments. I think this is a film that fits comfortably alongside The Wolf of Wall Street, War Dogs, and Pain and Gain as a contemporary crime drama that celebrates excess, condemns rampant political corruption, but also shows that it is so ingrained as like is ingrained in American culture as like an American value, I really think, is the way that it's portrayed. Gets by a lot on cynical humor, plays a lot of different beats than the way Francis Ford Coppola and Martin Scorsese probably would have conducted the genre, even though Scorsese did direct Wolf of Wall Street. I think that this shows a great Tom Cruise performance, very solid performance all around, very physical, very clearly very, like I said, very physically adept too, very well paced in that sense too, sweat slicked sort of style in this movie that I liked, brought to life too really by Cesar Chalone, the cinematographer's work in making this movie look very retrograde, very VHS kind of quality, which I thought was awesome too. Lot to like in this movie, not a perfect movie like you said too, would have liked to get more of a subtext with the CIA and Schaefer, played by Domhnall Gleeson, but I agree wholeheartedly. 3 out of 4 stars for American Made, directed by Doug Liman. Certainly will be in theaters for at least a couple weeks. Made about $16.5 million at the box office against a $50 million budget, but due to opening in other regions earlier, it has already surpassed its budget cost.
Okay,
it's
good.
made about $82 million, so it's on the hook. It's off the hook for its budget at least.
Okay.
Not the marketing yet, but off the hook. $17 million. There were a lot of box office analysts were going back and forth whether or not that was a bomb or that was a success, depending on how you look at it. I think for a Tom Cruise vehicle in 2017, it's about on par.
I was going to say, compared to the last movie, not Wall, but before that, Edge of Tomorrow, which bombed, and I thought that was a great movie.
Yes, entirely different movie too, with entirely different standards. I think it's fine. It's a fine opening. I think it's a movie that's going to linger too a little bit longer. It's going to linger at least until well into October, into this month and stuff like that. I think it really will stick around.